I think there is a temporary easing because there are some economic necessities, especially on the US side, and also on the Chinese side. They need to restart their economy after basically bringing it to a standstill. But the fundamentals of the relationship are going to remain pretty complicated. I think Washington is now very much in the mindset of this is our major competitor, and we need to basically oppose and contain China on every front. And this is shared not just within the Trump administration, but across the political board. Listen to Democratic leaders, Nancy Pelosi, but also Joe Biden. They have pretty much the same line on China.
I'll ask you then about the EU position on this, because I had a terrific conversation with Ms. von der Leyen where we talked about whether Europe would throw its weight behind an independent investigation into the source of COVID-19. And she said, yes, it would. But I got the sense that there was a little bit of a reluctance to be too aggressive here. And yet consistently, it seems, Europe falls short when it comes to making gains with China on basic issues like market access. What happens from here, or what needs to happen from here?
I mean, you're absolutely right. Europe doesn't like to choose. Europe doesn't want to choose between, let's say, the United States and China. So Europe is generally always in a balancing act, and that's why you felt more reluctance from von der Leyen than obviously from a US administration official. And the conclusion of the past year of a new kind of relationship from Europe towards China, I would say a harder relationship where for the first time a year ago, the EU acknowledged that China was also a systemic rival. That conclusion is pretty mixed, where Europe has delivered on some defensive mechanisms against foreign direct investment that are too aggressive or targeted at strategic sectors. China has delivered very little. And even on foreign policy matters like human rights, cooperation on Africa or Iran, actually there is a backsliding. So the bottom line here is that Europe has very little leverage on China's global and economic posture. And the question to von der Leyen and other European leaders is, what are you going to do next? Are you going to gear up and intensify the pressure on China, or are you going to try to keep on balancing, which I think ultimately will fail?
Fabrice, everywhere I look, I see foreign policy problems for Europe. Your old organisation, NATO, is facing questions about the US commitment, as we saw with the boss of NATO getting lambasted by President Trump in the last year or so. I see problems from Putin. I see problems from Turkey. I see problems about immigration from North Africa and China as well. It can't act in a coordinated fashion when it comes to corona bonds. How's it going to do it on a foreign policy basis?
Yeah, and that's always been the weakest point of the common European project. It's foreign policy. And now that Europe is going to enter effectively in an economic but potentially also political recession of common will to work together, this is going to be even more challenging. But the bottom line is Europe cannot really afford to choose. It needs to be out there. It needs to be exerting its influence in its own neighborhood, and it can't let powers like China get away with it. So I think Europe will have to be able to walk and chew at the same time and really think hard, what are the 2 or 3 external issues where we really do need to have a collective weight. And I think China is one of those. And this is what we said in our report. They need to gear up their collective strategy on China, possibly by aligning themselves much more closely with Indo-Pacific democracies like South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and working together to basically triangulate vis-a-vis China and not just wait, obviously, to have a better, if at all, transatlantic relationship with the next US administration.